Chicago was being battered by a torrential downpour. Daniel Anderson sat before his birthday cake, the only light in the empty living room coming from a single small lamp. The candlelight flickered, illuminating the offer letter beside it, its bold, gold-embossed letters catching the light. The artificial intelligence model Daniel had developed had once doubled Stellar Corp's profits. He had been on the verge of a major transfer to London to make his mark. But his girlfriend, Sarah Miller, had begged him not to go, so he had stayed in Chicago. Now, the London division was facing a crisis, and they were desperately trying to recruit him, offering him stock options and a promotion to executive vice president as incentives. Daniel had accepted. He accepted because today was his birthday, and Sarah hadn't even bothered to come home. Instead, she had appeared on the Facebook feed of her underclassman, Leo Vance. In the photo, she was tutoring Leo, their faces so close they were nearly touching, and the tender smile on her profile was impossible to miss. The image was a spike driving straight into Daniel's eyes. "Daniel, when you turn 25, we'll get engaged." "I'd love that," he had said. They had made that promise years ago, and today was his 25th birthday. They had met when they were 5, becoming the childhood sweethearts everyone admired. At 20, she had been the one to confess her feelings, crying as she promised him a lifetime together. At 22, when she decided to pursue her doctorate, he had abandoned his own graduate school plans and entered the workforce early, all to help pay for her tuition. Yet everything Daniel did never seem to be enough. It was never going to be enough. Now, Sarah was always using seminars and her dissertation as an excuse, the distance between them growing wider each day. The last iMessage from her on his phone, sent that very afternoon, was a lie. "Working on my dissertation tonight. I'll be home late." Daniel smiled bitterly. It wasn't that Sarah didn't have time. It was that she spent all her time being intimate with her underclassmen. Whatever. His heart felt like ice, but Daniel still wanted to see his birthday through to the end. He had once imagined so many beautiful futures with Sarah, but now all those dreams were dissolving into nothing. Daniel watched the candle burn down to its end and slowly closed his eyes. "My 25th birthday wish is to leave Sarah Miller. To leave her for good." With that, he blew out the candle. Then, with a steady hand, he signed the offer letter. The signature was binding. In 1 week, he had to be in London. It was 2 in the morning by the time Sarah got home. As she opened the door to the deep darkness of the apartment, she saw Daniel sitting on the sofa, silently smoking a cigarette. The coffee table had been cleared, and the candle on the cake was long since extinguished. Sarah frowned, speaking nonchalantly as she kicked off her shoes. "Smoking again? Put that out and open a window. The whole place stinks. How am I supposed to live here?" She added, "I know it's your birthday. I was just swamped. I'll make it up to you later." Daniel's face, half hidden in shadow, was perfectly calm, but inside, a storm of emotions churned. He slowly exhaled a ring of smoke, his voice low and steady. "What were you so busy with?" The smoke swirled around him, the dim light carving sharp angles into his profile. Sarah felt a flicker of something, a sense that Daniel suddenly seemed like a stranger. A pang of guilt made her look away, unable to meet his direct gaze. "I was dealing with an urgent issue with my journal submission. My advisor kept me late. Didn't you see my message?" Hearing her lie so smoothly, without a hint of a blush, Daniel let out a short, sharp laugh and crushed the cigarette but in the ashtray. Even though he knew exactly what she would say, a bitter ache he couldn't name still rose in his chest. As Daniel put out his cigarette, Sarah sat down on the sofa and quickly changed the subject. "I got you a present. Open it. If you don't like it, we can exchange it." She pulled a pristine gift box from her purse, then picked up a lighter and moved to relight the candle on the cake. Just then, her phone, left on the coffee table, buzzed. Daniel glanced over. The contact name on the screen was Leo. The messages were from her underclassmen. "Sarah, did you get home okay?" Another message read. "Thanks so much for today. I'll treat you to a nice dinner next time to thank you." Along with the overly familiar words was a sticker with a heart emoji. Daniel felt a sharp pang in his chest. He opened the gift box. Inside was an expensive-looking watch, its face studded with tiny sapphire blue crystals. But he had told her more than once that he didn't like blue. It was also the exact same model Leo was wearing in his latest Facebook photo. So this was just an afterthought, something she'd grabbed after buying one for Leo. "Thanks," Daniel said flatly, immediately tossing the watch into a drawer in the coffee table. In the past, he would have been furious, demanding to know what was going on. But now, it just didn't matter anymore. His trust had been broken too many times. He was done trying to force things. Sarah didn't notice the look of finality in Daniel's eyes, or how his expressionless face suddenly broke into a smile of pure relief. He was going to make his wish come true. It was time to leave, quietly and completely. He wanted nothing more to do with this woman. Before they could even cut the cake, her phone rang. Sarah scurried over and snatched the phone from the table. "Daniel, my advisor needs me to revise something urgently. You can have the cake." Without a moment's hesitation, she rushed into the study and shut the door firmly behind her. The sound of the door closing echoed in the quiet room. The second Leo needed her, Sarah couldn't even be bothered to pretend anymore. She hadn't even asked him what he wished for. The living room was silent once more. Daniel quietly scraped the entire cake into the trash can, went to his room, and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, he woke up to an empty apartment. All he wanted was to leave as quickly as possible. So he got out of bed and immediately started packing for his move. He took down every photo of them from the bedroom walls, gathering up all the mementos, big and small. The paintings Sarah had given him when she first told him she loved him went straight into the trash. Then he walked into the study. The desk was covered in books and papers. He picked up a textbook on artificial intelligence. The name written inside the cover was Leo Vance. It was Daniel's own field of study, a world away from Sarah's work in semiconductor physics. He remembered trying to convince her to major in the same subject, telling her how much he could help her with her career. But she had refused, saying AI was too hard and she didn't want to waste time learning a new field. Now, this textbook was filled with her dense, meticulous notes. It was staggering to think how much time and energy she had poured into it for Leo. All his earnest advice from years ago had been rendered a complete joke. Daniel felt no great surge of emotion. He simply placed the book back on the desk, as if he'd never seen it. Just then, his phone chimed. A message from Leo had popped up. "Sarah's helping me study, but she forgot one of her books. Could you do us a favor and bring it to campus?" The voice on the other end was sharp and smug. "Oh, and by the way, Sarah's the one who asked me to call you." Daniel almost laughed at the kid's pathetic arrogance. It was obvious how far things had gone between him and Sarah for Leo to feel so bold. But Daniel had already made his decision to leave. None of this mattered anymore. "She can come get it herself. I'm busy." He hung up and went back to his packing. Not even 30 minutes later, the sharp click of high heels echoed in the hallway. The front door flew open, and Sarah stormed in, her face a mask of unconcealed fury. "I asked you to bring one thing over, and you can't even do that. But you have time to stand here packing," she snapped. "Didn't Leo tell you it was me asking?" But no matter what she said, Daniel ignored her, continuing to methodically pack his belongings. It was then that Sarah finally seemed to realize something was truly wrong. "What are you doing? Are you packing for a trip?" "There's no point in keeping things I don't want anymore," Daniel said, finally looking at her. That one look sent a jolt of panic through her. Sarah opened her mouth as if to say something else, but then closed it, turned, and hurried out the door. After tossing the last photograph into the trash, Daniel booked his flight to London. Staring at the booking confirmation on his screen, he took a long, deep breath of relief. In 1 week, he would be gone, completely vanished from Sarah's world. 2 more days passed. Daniel had handed off the majority of his work responsibilities in Chicago and was just tying up the last few loose ends. Sarah hadn't come home at all the previous night. Her excuse was that she and Leo were working through revisions on her dissertation and that she'd be staying on campus for the rest of the week. Daniel didn't press the issue. Then there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find his best friend, Chris Johnson, whom he hadn't seen in a while. Daniel had only told him what was happening yesterday, and now here he was, having rushed right over. "Man, you finally came to your senses. I felt so bad for you," Chris said, his voice full of energy. "You already turned down a huge opportunity for Sarah once. You can't back out this time, no matter what." Daniel, tapping away at his laptop, allowed a long sigh. "I won't." "Good." Chris tentatively held out a cigarette, surprised when Daniel took it without hesitation. It was the brand they'd smoked since high school, the one they always shared when they needed to talk. Daniel hadn't touched one since he quit for Sarah years ago. The realization made Chris's tone soften. "So, have you told her yet?" "There's no need," Daniel replied. Chris glanced at the trash bags filled with mementos and photos, and after a moment, it all clicked. Even though Daniel hadn't spelled it out, he understood. He could only imagine how much his friend had been putting up with all these years. "We've known each other since grade school, man. I've watched you and Sarah go through everything, Chris said. Honestly, you're a great guy. She doesn't deserve you. On your last night here, I'm getting all the old crew together. We're throwing you a proper going-away party. Okay, Daniel murmured, saying nothing more as he exhaled a plume of smoke. He'd grown up poor after his father died and his mother remarried. All he had ever wanted was a stable, loving family of his own. Looking around the apartment, he could still remember moving in, lying on this very sofa with Sarah, talking excitedly about their future. Chris sensed his friend's mood and quickly changed the subject. Dude, look at this suitcase. It gets freezing in London. Is this all you're bringing? Come on, I'm taking you out to get some real gear. They spent the afternoon shopping, picking up a lot of essentials. But while they were in a store looking at winter coats, they ran into Sarah. She was with Leo, holding his hand as they shopped. She was intently helping him pick out a coat, carefully zipping it up for him. They looked exactly like a couple in the first flush of love. Then Leo spotted Daniel. He made a show of stroking Sarah's cheek, and she didn't pull away. The last bit of warmth in Daniel's heart turned to ice. As Sarah walked to the register to pay for the coat, Leo strode over to them. Well, since you saw that, I guess there's nothing left to hide. He tilted his chin up, a smirk on his face. I'm officially pursuing Sarah. From now on, may the best man win. Don't think for a second I'm going to back down. Chris, standing beside Daniel, looked like he was about to lunge at him. Daniel held him back with a hand on his arm, letting out a soft, humorless laugh. Then I wish you the best of luck. What does it matter to me if you win over a woman I no longer want? At those words, the smug look on Leo's face vanished, replaced by a cold glare. He'd heard all about Daniel's accomplishments in their field. He was desperate to prove he was better. Huh, you're just trying to save face. Sarah told me everything, including how you used to worship the ground she walked on. You just don't get what she needs. She wants a young, promising researcher like me. She wants my passion. Chris's face was turning purple with rage. He couldn't just stand there and watch his best friend be insulted like this. He lunged forward and grabbed Leo by the collar. You're not fit to shine my friend's shoes. The way he's being treated today will be you tomorrow. The comment hit a nerve, but Leo didn't fight back. Instead, he just yelled, go on, do it. Hit me. Leo clearly thought Chris wouldn't dare, but a second later, Chris's fist connected with his jaw, sending him staggering to the floor. Daniel watched, finding it odd. The kid was cunning. He didn't seem like the type who couldn't dodge a simple punch. And just as he suspected, a moment later Sarah was rushing toward them, her face etched with panic. She helped Leo to his feet, her eyes, when they met Daniel's, blazing with fury. Daniel, what is wrong with you? Hitting him? I am so disappointed in you. Leo clutched his face, putting on a wounded expression. Sarah, it's okay. Daniel was probably just jealous. Don't be mad at him. We have been spending a lot of time together. I told you I needed to work with Leo for a while. How can you be so petty and insecure? Sarah demanded, turning back to Daniel. She fussed over Leo's face, her voice dripping with concern for him and reproach for Daniel. Seeing this, Daniel didn't even bother trying to explain. Give me a break. You're a grown man. Stop acting. Chris spat. Chris cracked his knuckles, ready for round two. But Daniel just clapped him on the shoulder. It's not worth it. Let's go. Chris reluctantly backed down. The two of them turned and walked away without another word. Sarah's anger slowly faded, replaced by a look of confusion. Wait, she called out. Why are you buying all this stuff? We have perfectly good sheets and blankets at home. They're old. I'm replacing them. Daniel didn't even turn around. The flat, cold tone of his voice sent an unfamiliar chill through her. She suddenly noticed how thin his jacket was, a stark contrast to the expensive, imported coat she had just bought for Leo. She hurried after him. If you needed a new coat, you should have just told me. It's not like I wouldn't buy you one. This time, Daniel didn't respond at all. 3 more days passed in a blur. Sarah didn't come home. She didn't even send a text. Daniel thought it was for the best. If she came back, she would immediately see the 2 large suitcases packed and waiting by the door. Every trace of him had been scrubbed from the apartment. He tore another page from the calendar, sitting in the corner of the sofa, silently counting down the hours. Time was flying. Soon, it would be his last day. It was his last night. Chris had organized a farewell party, a proper send-off for Daniel. As he pushed open the door to the private room at the bar, a crowd of their old friends rushed toward him. Party poppers exploded. To our boy, on to bigger and better things. The room was filled with confetti and laughter. Daniel stood there, stunned for a second, before a wide, genuine smile spread across his face. With friends like these to see him off, What was there to regret? In the middle of the celebration, one of their friends piped up, "So, Daniel, we're going to be a big shot in London. When are you bringing Sarah over?" Another friend chimed in, "Yeah, that girl can't stand to be away from you. I remember she'd tag along even on your short business trips." Chris's expression immediately soured. Before he could intervene, Daniel just laughed. "That won't be necessary. We're breaking up." The words hung in the air, and the entire room fell deathly silent. Shock was written on every face. People looked at each other, wondering if they'd heard him correctly. This was Daniel Anderson they were talking about. The Daniel Anderson who had sacrificed his own career for his girlfriend. Just as the questions were about to start, the door swung open. Sarah stood there, beaming, with Leo's arm linked through hers. "Oh, you're all here. I just saw Chris's message after I got out of class. He said you were all getting together. I hope you don't mind that I brought a friend." The tender way they looked at each other made them seem like a couple to anyone who didn't know better. Chris looked mortified, whispering to Daniel, "I'm so sorry, man. It was a group text. I must have forgotten to take her off the list." Daniel was perfectly composed. "It's fine. Since they're here, they might as well join us." "See, I told you Daniel was a great guy," Leo said with a smirk, pulling Sarah with him to claim the best seats at the table. The two of them quickly settled in. Sarah ordered 2 more rounds of drinks for the table and started a game of dice. After a few rounds, everyone seemed to be having a good time. Daniel and Leo, however, were both terrible at the game and ended up owing several drinks each after losing more than a dozen rounds. As the others started teasing them, Sarah stood up. "Leo's not much of a drinker, and he doesn't really play these games. I'll take his for him." With that, she picked up a beer and downed it. Leo looked at Daniel, his eyes full of challenge. "Sarah drank for me. You can't back out now. If he's got someone covering for him, then I'm covering for my boy," Chris declared. Chris shot Sarah a cold smile. "Daniel drove here tonight. Surely you knew that." Sarah's heart sank. She instinctively glanced over at Daniel. But his expression was so neutral that she quickly convinced herself she hadn't done anything wrong. She and Leo dove back into the game, their laughter filling the room. Daniel, however, retreated to a corner and quietly lit a cigarette. Sarah claimed she was there for the party, but really, she was just trying to get him to accept Leo into their circle. Everything she did was for Leo's sake. But it didn't matter. He had already moved on. The dark cloud over his mood lifted. He picked up the karaoke microphone and selected a song. It was Sarah's favorite, one they had sung together more times than he could count. But she was too busy laughing and flirting with Leo to even notice. "When a deep love runs aground, I wake up and learn to let go," he sang. The song ended, and Sarah had missed the entire thing. Before they knew it, it was 1 in the morning. Everyone had a great time and finally left the karaoke bar. Since Leo and Daniel hadn't been drinking, they were the designated drivers. As his headlights cut through the narrow street, Daniel felt a sudden chill. He was concentrating on the road when a large truck suddenly swerved into his lane up ahead. Its horn blared. The truck had lost control, smashed through the median barrier, and was now hurtling toward them against traffic. Daniel jerked the wheel and slammed on the brakes, managing to bring his car to a screeching halt. The two vehicles stopped just inches apart. Suddenly, there was a massive crash from behind. A powerful force slammed his car forward into the truck, shattering the windshield. The scene descended into chaos as Chris and the others scrambled to pull Daniel from the wreckage. "Daniel, are you okay?" Chris yelled. "I'm fine. Just a few cuts," Daniel said, pressing a hand to a gash on his forehead and wiping away the blood. When he got out, he saw that Leo had rear-ended him. Leo stumbled out of his own car, clutching his leg. "My leg? It hurts so much." Sarah rushed out and checked him over, breathing a sigh of relief when she saw it was only a bruise. She then turned on Daniel, her voice filled with anger. "Why did you slam on the brakes like that? Didn't you know he was right behind you?" she demanded. "The front of his car is completely smashed. What if you had caused him to break his leg?" Chris, who had just finished bandaging Daniel's forehead, exploded. "Are you out of your mind? Can't you see he's the one who hit us?" he roared. "He was so far back. How could he possibly crash into us? He shouldn't even be allowed to drive." Leo looked embarrassed, feigning remorse. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. It's my fault. I'm still not used to driving. I apologize to everyone." "It's not your fault," Sarah insisted, adamant that Daniel was to blame. She then made a big show of calling an ambulance for Leo. It wasn't until the police arrived that the situation was clarified. They determined that both the truck driver and Daniel had reacted correctly to the emergency. The fault lay entirely with Leo, who had failed to maintain a safe following distance and had hit the gas instead of the brake. Sarah finally dropped it, but she still tried to make excuses for Leo. Let's just forget about it. He just got his license, and he's hurt. That's not an injury. He needs to pay for the damages and apologize today. Chris insisted, but Daniel just waved a dismissive hand. Forget it, Daniel said. Let's just go. At this point, he was past caring. He turned and walked away. Sarah watched him go, hesitating for a moment before deciding not to follow. She helped Leo into the ambulance and went with him to the hospital. 2 hours later, after the police reports were filed, Daniel decided not to even bother with an insurance claim. He went home to pack his last few things for his flight. His flight was at 8 in the morning. He had 4 hours left. After thinking for a long time, he decided he should say a final goodbye. He sent Sarah a short iMessage. Come home. I need to talk to you. But his message went unanswered, like a stone dropped into the ocean. An hour passed. Then 2. The airline sent notification after notification, but the message thread with Sarah remained empty. Daniel quietly stood up, changed into the new, tailored suit he'd bought for his trip, rebandaged the cut on his forehead, and washed his face. He was just about to head to the airport early when a reply finally came through. At the hospital with Leo, a second message followed. I'll be back later. I promise I'll make it up to you. Daniel actually smiled. He had waited 7 days for her. He had waited 20 years for her, and he had gotten nothing. This time, he wasn't going to wait any longer. Without a second's hesitation, he deleted and blocked her number. He placed the letter he'd written on the coffee table. On the front of the envelope, he had written a single sentence. Sarah, we're done. After that was done, Daniel took one last look around the apartment that had been their home, then turned and walked out the door. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Sarah was walking back to Leo's room with breakfast. Leo, you mentioned you have a sensitive stomach, so I just got you some oatmeal. You're too good to me, Sarah. Taking care of me all night, and now you have to eat bland oatmeal with me. Leo leaned closer to her. So about the accident last night, Daniel isn't going to make a big deal about it, is he? What's he going to say? Sarah replied dismissively. You're a new driver, and it wasn't even that bad. Leo was secretly pleased, but put on a concerned face. But the crash looked pretty bad. Do you think Daniel was hurt? I'm a little worried. He added, maybe you should go home and check on him, just so he doesn't get the wrong idea about us. At this, Sarah hesitated. The crash had been bad, and she'd been so focused on Leo that she hadn't even checked to see if Daniel was hurt. She reached for her phone to text him, but then stopped. If Daniel was seriously injured, he would have come to the hospital himself. He was a 25-year-old man. After all, not a kid like Leo. It was noon before she was finally done fussing over Leo and could drive him back to his dorm. For some reason, she couldn't shake a feeling of deep unease. It felt as if everything had started to shift the moment she saw Daniel packing. She had spent all her time with Leo recently. She hadn't been paying attention. Come home. I need to talk to you. Seeing the messages on her phone now, Sarah raced home, her heart pounding. What could Daniel possibly need to talk to her about? She racked her brain, trying to find a clue, but came up blank. She started scrolling back through their iMessage history. Sarah herself was shocked. In the past week, they had only exchanged a handful of texts. The frequency had been dwindling for months. She realized with a jolt that she had absolutely no idea what was going on in Daniel's life anymore. He had grown more and more distant until they were barely speaking at all. How had this happened? A terrible premonition began to creep over her. Sarah's mind flashed back to the scene at the mall. That was it. Daniel must have been upset about seeing her and Leo together. That had to be the reason for his strange behavior. But he loved her so much. He wouldn't stay mad over something so trivial. All she had to do was explain things, sweet-talk him a little, and everything would be fine. With that in mind, Sarah decided to stop and buy him a small gift to smooth things over. She sprinted up the 4 flights of stairs to their apartment and threw open the door. She had the perfect excuse ready on her lips. But the apartment was completely empty. A dead, piercing silence filled the space. Every trace of Daniel was gone. It was as if he had never lived there at all. Sarah's hands began to shake as she fumbled for her phone. Her messages wouldn't deliver. Her calls went straight to a cold, automated voice. She forced herself to look at the sofa, his favorite spot in the apartment. Everything was in its usual place. For a second, she could almost see him sitting there, putting out a cigarette to welcome her home. But the vision vanished in an instant. The ashtray was empty and clean. All that was left on the coffee table was a single, sealed envelope. Dazed, Sarah stumbled toward it. She picked up the envelope. The words written on the front were cold and sharp, stabbing at her eyes. Sarah, we're done. The world tilted on its axis. Sarah felt dizzy, her legs giving out as she collapsed onto the sofa. Her entire world was crumbling around her, collapsing from the outside in. The terrible possibility had become a reality, a brutal blow directly to her heart. She felt numb, but she forced herself to open the letter and read on. Barring some unforeseen event, we will never see each other again. My birthday wish was to leave you forever. You don't have to keep any of the promises you made to me. I'm done waiting, and I don't want them anymore. The further she read, the more the words blurred through her tears. 20 years of memories flashed through her mind, a slideshow of moments both precious and, she now realized, cheapened by her actions. Playing house on a park bench as kids. The way they both used to stare at the amusement park's Ferris wheel, their eyes shining with longing. She had promised Daniel she would take him on it when they were older, but she never had, right up to the day he left. The final lines of his letter were brief and cold. Sarah, let's just end this cleanly. I don't want to be in love with you anymore. Daniel. Her eyes fell on the empty space at the bottom of the page, and the finality of it felt like her oxygen supply had been cut off. Her breathing grew ragged, and the tears she'd been holding back finally streamed down her face. Beneath the letter was a folder of documents. It was the deed to the apartment, signed over to her, along with bank statements detailing his entire life savings, over $1 million, also transferred to her name. Every last cent. He had promised he would give her a comfortable life, and he had kept his word. And this was how she had repaid him. Daniel, I don't want any of this, she whispered. Sarah scrambled to her feet, tossing the folder aside. The shock had short-circuited her ability to think. All she could do was try to find him. She spent day after day searching for any trace of Daniel. She went to his office at Stellar Corp, even filed a missing persons report, but found nothing. On the verge of a complete breakdown, she happened to walk past the department store where she'd last seen him. Chris had been with him, helping him buy all those things for his trip. Chris would know where he went. She rushed to the karaoke bar where they'd had the party. She begged the manager for Chris's contact information. When he finally answered, she stammered, "Hello, Chris? I'm Daniel's girlfriend." After a long silence, a cold, harsh laugh came from the other end of the line. Girlfriend? I didn't know Daniel had a girlfriend. If that's all, I'm hanging up. Wait, Sarah cried out. Please, I just need to know where he went. But before she could finish her sentence, Chris's voice exploded over the phone. Are you kidding me? Cut the devoted girlfriend act. Go back to your little boy toy and leave Daniel alone. Haven't you done enough? Do you want to torture him for the rest of his life? I'm sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, Sarah sobbed. Sorry doesn't do any good now. Where were you when he needed you? It's too little too late. Get lost and stop bothering him. The line went dead. Chris had blocked her number. Undeterred, she started calling their other friends, going down the list one by one. The response was always the same. A few harsh words, an order to leave Daniel alone, and then another blocked number. She dialed the last number on her list, her heart filled with despair. If this person didn't know, she might truly never see Daniel again. After nearly 30 minutes of her desperate pleading, the friend on the other end finally broke. Just give it up, Sarah. He's in London now. You're not going to find him. London. He's in London, she repeated, clinging to the words like a lifeline. She frantically searched through her phone, her messages, her emails, anything. Finally, she found it. An old email chain about Daniel's potential transfer to London. It was from 2 years ago, when he had first been offered the position. She had been the one who begged him to turn it down, to stay with her. Reading the details now, she finally understood. The project Daniel was supposed to lead was a multi-billion-dollar international partnership. The transfer came with a promotion to a senior executive position. He had given up all of that for her. The weight of her selfishness crushed her. In a fit of guilt-ridden panic, she raced to the airport. London, England. The city in early winter was just as she imagined. The outskirts were gray and cold, just like back home. The head office had provided him with a corporate apartment and a personal assistant, a bright young woman named Chloe Davis. You'll get used to it, Chloe assured him with a smile. I felt the same way when I first moved here. It just takes a little time. And once you wrap up this project, you'll be the new EVP. You got this. Daniel nodded. It was a major international project, a critical one for the company. The big data model was in its third generation. All he had to do was solve the core search algorithm issue, and it would be ready for deployment in 6 months. He was so engrossed in his work that he barely noticed her saying goodbye. The bus pulled away from the curb with a low rumble. As the bus carrying Chloe disappeared down the street and the exhaust fumes cleared, he saw a thin figure emerge from the mist across the road, walking slowly toward him. Daniel frowned, confused. When the figure drew closer and he could see her face, he felt a faint ripple of surprise, but it quickly subsided, leaving his expression calm and unreadable. Sarah looked terrible. Her hair was a mess, her face was smudged with dirt, and she was wearing clothes far too thin for the damp London cold. It was hard to imagine how she had managed to find him all alone in a foreign country. "Daniel," she croaked, her eyes wide with a desperate excitement, her voice raw. "I'm so sorry." Daniel didn't move. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching her. "I'm sorry, Daniel. I was wrong." She rushed toward him, her arms outstretched as if to embrace him, but stopped short. She seemed afraid, watching his face cautiously for any reaction. Daniel remained perfectly still, his eyes as calm and empty as a frozen lake. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice clipped and unfamiliar. "I came here to apologize," Sarah began, but he had already turned and started walking away. She hurried to catch up, her heart hammering in her chest. They walked in single file, a painful echo of the way they used to walk home together. But this time, he didn't notice her hands, red and raw from the cold. He didn't pull them to his chest to warm them or offer her his coat. After a few moments, Daniel walked into a small cafe. Sarah followed him silently, feeling like a chastened child. To her surprise, he ordered for both of them. He ordered 2 sandwiches and a coffee for each of them. He pushed a plate toward her without ever meeting her eyes. "Eat this," he said, "and then go home." Sarah stared at him, stunned. "Daniel, please," she begged. "We've known each other for 20 years. I can't live without you." "We broke up," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. She pressed on, desperate. "But we can get back together. I know I messed up. I know I did so many things wrong. Please, just give me one more chance." Daniel sliced his sandwich cleanly in half. "Give me one good reason why I should." "A reason." Sarah froze. And in that moment, she realized she didn't have one. Not a single one. All the good times, all their history, it had all been built on the foundation of his love for her. He had sacrificed so much, and she had given him nothing in return. She had nothing to offer. She said nothing. He didn't speak either. When the meal was over, Daniel stood up and walked out. This time, Sarah didn't follow. She just watched him go, her eyes red, a new resolve hardening in her expression. "Daniel," she whispered to his retreating back, "I swear, I will pay back everything I owe you and more." She had made up her mind. She had never truly given him anything before, but it wasn't too late to start. From that day forward, she began to follow Daniel everywhere, showering him with expensive gifts. She was a constant shadow at his apartment and his office, waiting for him every morning at 7 o'clock sharp. The London office was inundated with her deliveries. Sarah seemed to believe that this was what it meant to make an effort, that these grand gestures could win him back. But Daniel never gave her so much as a glance. In fact, he found her so irritating that he started taking a different route home from work just to avoid her. A week went by like this. Chloe walked into the data lab, holding another gift-wrapped box. Another delivery from her. What should I do with it? Daniel, deep in concentration on a critical part of the code, looked up, annoyed at the interruption. A flash of irritation crossed his face. "Throw it out. Throw all of it out," he said sharply. "From now on, if she sends anything, just throw in the trash. Don't even tell me about it." "Got it," Chloe said. Chloe nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. A moment later, she looked at a missed call on her own phone, hesitated, then handed it to Daniel. "She's calling the main office line now, asking for you." He took the call. It was from the authorities. Sarah had been detained. Her tourist visa had expired, and she was refusing to leave the country. She had spent every last penny on those gifts for him. She couldn't even afford the fine or a plane ticket home. Daniel sighed, told his team to halt their work, and rushed out. When he arrived at the immigration detention center, he found a chaotic scene. Daniel paid her fine and spent the next hour navigating the bureaucracy to get her released. Watching him through the window, seeing him take care of everything, Sarah's heart filled with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. It was a strange, unexpected wave of happiness. It was just like back in Chicago, when he used to get up early every morning to make her a hot breakfast. He'd still care about her, she thought. If she just kept trying, she was sure she could win him back. Sarah stared at Daniel's back, afraid to look away even for a second, terrified that if she blinked, he would vanish again. Finally, all the paperwork was done. Daniel didn't leave. He just sat quietly in a chair in the waiting area. Seeing him waiting for her, Sarah was so overjoyed she could have jumped. She rushed toward him, ready to throw her arms around him. "You came for me," she cried. But a second later, he pushed her away hard. "Stay away from me," he said. For the first time, his face was not blank, but filled with a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. She was stunned. "What's wrong, Daniel? I thought you'd forgiven me." "Forgive you," he shot back. "How could I possibly forgive you? Do you have any idea how much work I've had to abandon because of this stupid mess?" he yelled, his voice raw. "I have worked so hard to get to this point in my life. Are you determined to ruin it all?" He grabbed her by the collar. "I gave you 20 years of my life. 20 years. What more could you possibly want from me?" Seeing him so close to completely losing control, Sarah was terrified into silence. In all the years they had been together, she had never, ever seen him this angry. It was as if all the resentment he'd been holding in for years was finally exploding. He was still in his work clothes, his face pale and drawn, with dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. Looking at him, she finally began to understand just how much pain she had caused him. I didn't mean to, Daniel," she stammered. "I'm so sorry, I really am." "And what good does sorry do?" he retorted. Daniel pushed her away again, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. He knew she wasn't doing any of this for him. It was all to soothe her own guilty conscience. She had never once stopped to think about how her actions affected him. "Sarah, stop being so damn selfish. I didn't come here to solve your problems. I came here to make sure you get on a plane back home," he said, his voice cold as steel. "From this moment on, I never want to see you again. You are exhausting." His words hit her like a physical blow. Sarah felt a wave of hysteria wash over her. She still couldn't understand how she managed to make every situation worse. Daniel's words were like knives, carving into her heart. But beneath the pain, there wasn't sadness, but a deep, crushing guilt. She wished she could give her own life to make things right. After all, this was all her fault. "You really don't want me anymore?" she whispered. Daniel placed a plane ticket on the bench beside her and walked away, disappearing into the gray morning without a backward glance. "He doesn't want me," she murmured to herself. "He really doesn't want me." She wanted to run after him, but his final words echoed in her mind, and she knew she had no choice but to go home. She had made too many mistakes. If she disobeyed him now, she knew there would be absolutely no hope left. The withdrawal from their relationship was agonizing. For 2 weeks, she barely slept. Before, at least she could see him. Now, all she could do was stare at old photos and ache with longing. She spent her days desperately searching for any way to win him back. In her quest for information, she started ambushing Chris every few days. "You again? Seriously?" Chris said, finding her waiting by his car as he left work. "Don't you ever give up? Please, Chris, you have to help me," she begged. "Talk to Daniel for me. You're the only one who can help." He looked at her, her hair unkempt, her eyes wild. He just scoffed. "Help you? Daniel gave you a million chances. Did you ever take a single one of them seriously?" His words hit her hard, and she finally started to understand. If she had just gone home that night, she would have seen he was leaving. If she had just offended him once, just once, he might not have given up all hope. Daniel was only human, after all. He needed her to choose him, to stand by him. How utterly soul-crushing it must have been for him to be let down by her, over and over again. "What's the matter? Cat got you tongue?" Chris snarled, pointing a finger at her. "You know why you never noticed any of that? Because you were too busy fawning all over that little punk to spare a single thought for Daniel. And now that he's gone, you finally feel the pain? You're a real piece of work." Sarah shook her head, flustered. "It wasn't like that. Leo is just a student I was mentoring. Are you still trying to lie?" Chris shot back. He was practically shouting now. "You abandoned Daniel for him. You learned a whole new field of study for him. If you're so crazy about the kid, why don't you just go be with him and leave Daniel the hell alone? Someone like you, playing both sides, deserves to be slapped. The fact that Daniel never laid a hand on you shows how much better he is than you'll ever be. You should be grateful." Each word was like an electric shock to Sarah's heart. For the first time, she was seeing things from Daniel's perspective, and she was horrified by how wrong she had been. She stood there in silence, letting him yell until he ran out of breath. Finally, she spoke. "Please," she said, her voice quiet. "Ask Daniel to unblock my number. I just want to make one last call." Wanting nothing more than for this to be over for his friend, Chris agreed. In London, Daniel had just finished a long day at work and was sitting down with a cup of tea. After a text from Chris assuring him this would be the last time, he unblocked Sarah's number. When she called, he answered and said one thing. "You have 1 minute." "Okay," she whispered back. Not daring to waste a second, Sarah started talking, beginning with his birthday and apologizing for every single mistake she had made, leaving nothing out. As her minute was about to end, her voice grew firm. "Daniel, I know you can't forgive me right now, so just wait. I'm going to cut all ties with Leo, and I promise I will not let you down again." She still believed that the only reason he had fallen out of love with her was Leo. She thought that if she could just cut Leo out of her life, everything between her and Daniel could go back to the way it was. Daniel, holding the phone to his ear, said nothing. The moment he had unblocked her number, a flood of her old messages had come through. There were hundreds of them, a desperate stream of apologies and reminiscences. Looking at them now, he felt a strange, complicated mix of emotions and didn't know what to say. His eyes drifted to a corner of his room. Sitting there was the expensive designer coat she had sent him. It had seemed a waste to throw it out, so it was the only one of her gifts he had kept. He had never worn it. He wanted to tell Sarah that it was over, that there was no going back. But before he could speak, her voice came through the phone again. "Your minute is up," she said. Just as the line went dead, Daniel finally whispered the words he needed to say, unsure if she had heard them. The tea in his hand had gone cold. Nothing could ever go back to the way it was. The winter wind blew, carrying the chill from London all the way back to Chicago. And with it came the end of the academic year. Sarah had no choice but to return to campus to prepare for her graduation. The moment she arrived, Leo found her. "Sarah, I've got great news," he announced. "My paper was accepted for publication. It's already getting a lot of attention." "That's nice," Sarah replied calmly. She handed him a tote bag she had brought with her. "Here, these are yours. I want you to take them back." Leo stared at her, a flicker of panic in his eyes. He'd heard she had been gone for a couple of weeks, that she had been looking for Daniel. And now this. It couldn't be. "What's this all about?" he asked, forcing a smile. "You can't take back a gift." Sarah ignored his protests and shoved the bag into his hands. "Sarah, did I do something wrong?" Leo asked, his voice laced with anxiety. "Whatever it is, just tell me. I can fix it." When she turned to walk away, he hurried after her. "Sarah, you have to at least give me a reason." The word reason seemed to ignite her anger. "You want a reason?" she snapped. "The reason is that because of your scheming and manipulation, the man I have known and loved for 20 years left me. That's your reason." Hearing this, Leo didn't look upset. He looked thrilled. If Daniel had broken up with her, that meant his own chances were better than ever. She was just hurting from the breakup. All he had to do was comfort her now, be there for her in her moment of weakness, and she would become completely dependent on him. It was a formula that had worked for him many times before. He immediately switched to a comforting tone. "Sarah, I know you're going through a hard time right now, but you'll get through this. Don't be sad. You still have me," he said softly. "Let me take you to a movie, okay? We could get a nice dinner afterwards." Sarah just gave him a look of cold contempt. "Don't ever talk to me again," she said. "Go do whatever it is you're supposed to be doing." At those words, real panic set in. He finally understood. She had never been interested in him at all. It had always been about Daniel. "No, please, don't leave me," he pleaded, grabbing her arm. "You promised you'd always look out for me. You said you'd treat me like a little brother." He was getting desperate. "What is it you like so much about him? Just tell me. I could be like him." Leo gripped her hand tightly. She shook him off, disgusted. Even now, after everything, all this grown man could think about was having her dote on him. He couldn't hold a candle to Daniel. "Let go of me right now, or I'm reporting you for harassment." She had tried to end things quietly, for the sake of their past friendship. But his pathetic clinging filled her with revulsion. And the more pathetic he became, the more she thought of Daniel's quiet strength. Leo finally let go, his tear-stained face a mask of bitter resentment. He gritted his teeth, a dark idea taking root in his mind. 6 months flew by in the blink of an eye. Spring had arrived in London, the mild oceanic breeze bringing a hint of warmth to the air. Daniel was just putting the finishing touches on his project. A notification popped up on his phone, a message from Sarah. Afraid of bothering him, she sent only one message a day, always after work hours, never more. "When are you coming back? I miss you." Daniel swiped the notification away out of habit, just as Chloe leaned over his shoulder. "What's that?" "Let me see," she said playfully. "Just spam," he replied. "Okay, well, are you coming to the party tonight?" Chloe started massaging his shoulders. "The project's finished. Mr. Young is throwing a celebration for the whole team. Of course I'm going." Why wouldn't I? Later at the party, they were both a few drinks in, looking out at the deep blue of the London night sky. They gently touched their glasses together. Thanks for all your hard work these past few months, Daniel said. I know I'm not the easiest person to work with. Not at all. I actually really like your personality, Chloe replied, gazing up at the sky. Everyone says you're reserved, but I think it's a special kind of quiet strength. It's captivating, just like this city. You're very charming, Daniel said with a small smile. He chuckled. So what are your plans? Now that the project is done, I'm hoping to stay on as your assistant. Once my position becomes permanent, I can apply for residency and stay in the UK for good. She looked at him, her eyes shining. She had been studying abroad for so long, and a deep sense of loneliness had settled in her heart. Daniel's arrival had given her someone to look up to, a reason to strive for more. Just then, their boss approached. Mr. Young walked over to them. After a brief greeting, he got right to the point. Daniel, we couldn't have done this without you. Which brings me to something I need to discuss with you. Sir, there's been a change of plans. The original idea was to promote you to EVP of the London office, but headquarters is feeling a bit protective. He continued, they feel top-tier talent like you is better kept close to home. Daniel's brow furrowed. What do you mean? I'm transferring you back to Chicago. The promotion to EVP still stands. Mr. Young clapped him on the shoulder. And don't worry, the compensation package is identical to what you would have gotten here. A $3 million base salary, plus a multi-million-dollar project bonus. You'll also be involved in corporate strategy and receive a significant stock package. Daniel was silent for a long moment. The money didn't matter to him. But in the end, he nodded. All right. After Mr. Young walked away, Daniel stood there in silence for a long time. The smile had vanished from Chloe's face, her eyes filled with disappointment. Feeling a little lost, all of a sudden, she asked quietly. Yeah, he admitted. You know, the situation with her, it doesn't have to be as big a deal as you're making it, Chloe said, swirling the wine in her glass, the party lights reflecting on her face. The more you build it up in your head, the harder it will be to move on. Daniel considered her words. She had a point. She seemed to understand him in a way few people did, always cutting right to the heart of the matter. I guess I'll head back tomorrow then, he said. I'll make sure the company takes care of you here. Chloe turned her head away. She was heartbroken that he was leaving, but she knew she had to hide it. With a personality like Daniel's, she knew confessing her feelings would be pointless. Don't worry about it. It won't be any fun here after you're gone anyway. I'll figure something out, she said with forced cheerfulness. Daniel seemed to sense her disappointment. Well, you take care of yourself. I hope we get to work together again someday. Me too, she said. The next day, his plane touched down at O'Hare International Airport. After 6 months away, Daniel was back in Chicago. Chris and a few of their other friends had booked a table at a fancy restaurant to welcome him home. Well, if it isn't the big shot EVP, Chris joked as he walked in. Come back to share the wealth with us common folk. 6 months, man. You look younger, another friend added. Of course he does. That London fog is a great preservative. The mood was light and cheerful the moment he walked in. Daniel couldn't help but smile. But then he saw a figure standing hesitantly by the entrance, and his smile faded. It was Sarah. She was dressed up, looking beautiful, but her makeup couldn't quite conceal the dark, weary circles under her eyes. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on their table. Months of pent-up longing seemed to rush out of her at once, her voice trembling as she spoke. Daniel, you're back. Did you come back for me? Is she stalking you now? Chris muttered, frowning. He ushered the rest of their friends into their private dining room. Sarah followed them in and immediately grabbed Daniel's arm. Daniel, why didn't you tell me you were coming back? You've lost weight. I'll make you a good home-cooked meal, she said, her voice pleading. Daniel gently removed her hand from his arm. What does that have to do with you? He asked coolly. Despite his coldness, she kept smiling, her grip not loosening in the slightest. Chris and the others, not wanting to cause a scene, gave up trying to stop her. Sarah, taking this as a sign of acceptance, looked overjoyed. Daniel, I've been studying AI really hard these past few months. I want to try to get a job in the same field as you, she said, talking quickly. How long are you back for? Are you staying for good this time? I'm not seeing Leo anymore. Please just talk to me. But at that very moment, Leo walked into the room, a triumphant look on his face. He excitedly took Sarah's arm. Sarah, I got the interview. After Sarah had cut ties with him, he had thrown himself into becoming a new person. He had even applied for a job at Stellar Corporation. He was trying to become more like Daniel, hoping it would win her back. What are you doing here? Sarah hissed. I told you it was over between us. Get out of here now." Her face was pale with fury. She had just managed to get this close to Daniel again. She couldn't let Leo ruin it. Daniel, however, seemed completely unconcerned. He barely even glanced at them. He had no intention of getting involved in their drama. Their love, their hate, it had nothing to do with him anymore. Chris was about to tell them both to leave, but Daniel stopped him with a wave of his hand. "It's fine," he said. "Let them stay. We can all eat together." After everything he had been through, his perspective had changed. It would be petty to make a scene and kick them out. So, Sarah and Leo joined the table. Sarah made sure to sit next to Daniel. Throughout the meal, she fussed over him, constantly asking him questions and piling food onto his plate. Leo, meanwhile, sat on her other side, completely ignored by everyone. The scene was a mirror image of the farewell party, only with their roles completely reversed. When the dinner was over, Daniel and his friends got up to leave. Sarah immediately followed. Leo tried to grab her arm to talk to her, but she violently shook him off. "Get lost," she snarled. He could only stand there, humiliated, watching her walk away, his heart burning with resentment. Why? He had tried so hard, and now Daniel was back to take her away from him again. When he got home, he sent Sarah a barrage of messages. To his surprise, her replies were friendly, a complete reversal from her behavior at the restaurant. She even asked him for information about Stellar Corp, saying she was preparing for an interview there the next day. Leo's heart soared. He thought she wanted to work with him. After all, she had learned an entirely new subject for him. Surely she wouldn't give up on him that easily. Leo sent her everything she asked for, his heart filled with renewed hope. The next morning, just as she'd said, Sarah was waiting for him outside the Stellar Corp building, her expression once again calm and composed. They went inside together and sat down in a conference room to wait for their interviewer. Leo helpfully arranged her resume and gave her some last-minute interview tips. He was just starting to daydream about their future together as colleagues when the door opened. Daniel walked in, dressed in a sharp gray suit, followed by two other executives. "Hello," Daniel said, his voice formal. "I'm Daniel Anderson, Executive Vice President of Stellar Corp, and I'll be conducting your interviews today." His features were sharp and defined, and the tailored suit gave him an air of authority. As he looked at the two of them, his expression remained completely neutral. He was only there because he always took a hands-on approach to hiring, not wanting to miss out on promising new talent. But to Sarah, it felt as if he had arranged this entire interview just for her. "Daniel, it really is you," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "You're the EVP now. Does that mean you're back for good?" Bathed in the sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he seemed impossibly tall, brilliant, and completely out of her reach. In that moment, she remembered why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. His brilliance, his dedication, his quiet, focused intensity. "Executive Vice President," Leo muttered beside her, his face ashen. Seeing the look of pure adoration on Sarah's face, he finally understood why she had been so friendly the night before. She hadn't been interested in him at all. She was here for Daniel, and Daniel was here to stay. The realization crushed his hopes all over again. "Let's begin the interview," Daniel said, his voice all business. He completely ignored Sarah's emotional state and proceeded with the standard questions. The other two interviewers, having done a quick background check, were inclined to reject both of them. But Daniel, insisting on absolute fairness, overruled them and hired both Sarah and Leo for a probationary period. Sarah was so overcome with emotion, she almost burst into tears. As long as she was at the company, she would have a reason to see him every day. Because her background wasn't a perfect fit, she was placed in an administrative support role. Her new goal was to work her way up and become Daniel's executive assistant. That way, she would have more opportunities to be near him. "Daniel, let me get that for you," she'd say, constantly finding excuses to be in his office. She was always trying to ingratiate herself, running errands for him and his team. Leo's heart sank. Daniel was so brilliant, a chief architect and an EVP at such a young age, while he was just a lowly intern. How could he ever hope to compete? How could he ever win Sarah's heart? A wave of despair washed over Leo, followed by a burning tide of jealousy and hatred. He had to do something. He had to find a way to bring Daniel down, to ruin him completely. Meanwhile, Sarah had followed Daniel all the way to his office. When she saw that he didn't have an assistant yet, she was secretly thrilled. "Is there something else you need?" Daniel asked, his hand on the door. Seeing that he was about to close the door in her face, She quickly pulled out a small box containing a pair of wedding rings. "I picked these out for you," she said. Daniel glanced at the beautifully crafted rings. His mind flashed back 2 years. He had seen this exact pair of rings, worth a small fortune, and had worked for months to save up enough money to buy them for their engagement. But she had kept putting him off, insisting they wait until after she graduated. He had begged her to marry him, and she had refused. Now, she was the one begging. The irony was staggering. Daniel barely looked at them. "What are these for?" "I don't need them. I saved up for 6 months to buy them," Sarah said, her voice small. "It's a thank you gift for giving me the job. You should take it. You're reading too much into it." "It was a purely professional decision," Daniel said, taking a step back. "And from now on, please address me by my title, just like everyone else." With that, he closed the door. The door shut firmly in her face, leaving her standing alone in the hallway. Her grand gesture, her heartfelt offering, had meant nothing to him. She had truly, completely broken his heart. And now, all her attempts to fix things were worthless. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern emerged. The same drama played out at the office every day, and it quickly became the subject of office gossip. Listening to his colleagues whisper about them, Leo felt a growing bitterness in his heart. He worked overtime for 2 weeks straight and finally managed to get assigned to Daniel's research team in the data lab. This time, he swore he would not let Daniel win. Daniel, as the company's lead architect, was a key figure. He was personally leading the development of a new AI project. In just 1 month, they had already reached the final, critical stage and were preparing for delivery to the client. Leo, now with the necessary security clearance, planted a virus in the system's core programming. Taking advantage of a moment when Sarah was away from her post in the security monitoring room, he also deleted the surveillance footage of his actions. Everyone else was too busy with the project deadline to notice a thing. The delivery date arrived all too quickly. In a massive presentation hall, Daniel was demonstrating the new AI model to a group of major international clients. The clients were extremely impressed and were preparing to sign the initial contract. But right in the middle of the final demonstration, something went wrong. The system glitched. The main screen flickered, and the AI began spewing nonsensical, garbled text, which quickly devolved into offensive slurs. 5 minutes later, the entire project team was assembled in the main conference room. Mr. Young slammed his fist on the table. "What the hell happened out there?" he roared, his face livid. "Our clients are furious. This company just lost a billion-dollar contract. Because of this, whoever is responsible for this project will be held accountable. I want answers now." Immediately, several other executives who saw Daniel as a rival began to speak up. "I believe EVP Anderson was the project lead, wasn't he? Our star talent? Making such a rookie mistake. Perhaps he's not ready for the position," another chimed in. "It's not just him. His entire department should be held responsible." Mr. Young's frown deepened. He couldn't believe that Daniel, who had always been so brilliant and reliable, could have made such a catastrophic error. He wanted to defend him, but in front of the entire board, he had to take a firm stance. As Leo was secretly gloating, Daniel slowly rose to his feet. "I have detailed logs of the entire development process," he said calmly. "They will prove that there were no errors in my team's work. I believe this was an act of sabotage." Sarah stood up as well. "I can also vouch for Mr. Anderson. I think this warrants a full investigation before any blame is assigned." The other junior members of the team, who had been too intimidated to speak up, now found their courage and began to voice their support for Daniel as well. Faced with a united front, the other executives backed down. Mr. Young, looking for a way to de-escalate the situation, seized the opportunity. "All right, I will go back to the clients and beg for one more chance," he declared. "I'm giving you 5 days to fix this and deliver a perfect product. If you fail, the consequences will stand." Watching Daniel slip through his fingers and seeing Sarah leap to his defense, the smug satisfaction on Leo's face vanished. Why? Why could he never win against Daniel? Why did Sarah always trust him, always take his side? He had been so close to getting rid of him for good. He couldn't let this chance slip away. An idea began to form in his mind, a way to take care of both of them at once. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. In the EVP's office, Sarah was energetically helping the team gather data for the investigation. Daniel walked in, his brow furrowed. "Who gave you permission to be in my office?" he asked sharply. "I'm just trying to help with the investigation." "Don't worry, Daniel. I'll find whoever did this to you." "Out," he said. Daniel tapped his fingers on the desk, his voice ice cold. The security footage from the time of the breach has been erased. If you hadn't been so busy trying to get my attention, you would have been at your post, and this never would have happened. Can you please just do the job you were hired for? If something like this happens again, you're fired." He sank into his chair and stared out the window for a long time. He never should have hired her. Sarah stood there, stunned, before finally leaving dejected. It seemed like every time she tried to help, she only made things worse. But she couldn't stop trying. This misunderstanding was spiraling out of control. She had to find the real culprit fast. Otherwise, she knew Daniel would hate her forever. Because the original model's data had been corrupted, Daniel had no choice but to work around the clock to build a new one from scratch. The rest of the team offered to help, but he turned them all down. This time, he couldn't afford to trust anyone. He would do it all himself. For 5 straight days, Daniel lived in a laboratory, barely eating or sleeping. This gave Leo the perfect opportunity. Each night, when Daniel was working late, lost in his work, Leo would sneak into the lab and turn the air conditioning down to its lowest setting. Daniel, already exhausted and running on fumes, soon came down with a raging fever. But he refused to stop working. He knew this was the most important challenge he had faced since returning to Chicago. If he failed, his career at the company would be over. He had always been the type to carry the weight of the world on his own shoulders. That hadn't changed. When the day of the second presentation arrived, he was ready. Daniel had run diagnostics on the new model again and again before he felt confident enough to present it. Mr. Young had managed to persuade the clients to return, but only by offering them a steep discount. They were still skeptical, but then Daniel began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "to compensate for the unfortunate incident last week, I will not be presenting the original model. Instead, I will be demonstrating a second-generation, upgraded version with significant improvements to both its processing speed and its search algorithm." He paused, then added, "I will also stake my career on its performance. If this model fails in any way, I will tender my resignation immediately." Hearing the conviction in his voice, the clients exchanged glances and agreed to see the demonstration. A moment later, the test began. "Begin test sequence." The screen filled with data. The AI responded to the client's queries instantly, flawlessly, with zero latency. The entire room was stunned into silence. The rival executives who had tried to undermine him were speechless. The clients were so thrilled that they not only reinstated the original contract, but doubled the size of their order. The entire company erupted in celebration. But in the midst of the celebration, Daniel, burning with fever and utterly exhausted, collapsed. "Daniel!" Sarah screamed, rushing to his side. With the help of several others, she got him to a hospital. According to the doctors, Daniel's condition was serious. He was suffering from extreme exhaustion, which had compromised his immune system. They were having trouble getting his fever to break. 2 days later, Sarah was back at work, pacing anxiously in the security office, trying to think of anything she could do to help Daniel recover. Leo suddenly appeared at her door, holding a container of what smelled like delicious chicken soup. "Sarah, you haven't eaten in days. You need to take care of yourself," he said, offering her the soup. "Take it away." "I'm not hungry," she snapped, not even looking at him. Leo pressed on. "But this is a special family recipe. It's guaranteed to cure whatever ails you. You should have some while it's hot." At that, Sarah's head snapped up. "It cures everything, you say? Give me the recipe." All she could think about was Daniel. He was so weak. He needed something to build up his strength. That evening, she went to the hospital. As soon as she got off work, Sarah rushed to the hospital, carrying a thermos of the soup she had spent hours preparing herself. She had spared no expense, buying only the finest, most nourishing ingredients she could find. "Stop right there," Chris said, blocking the doorway to Daniel's room. He put out his cigarette. "What are you doing here? He doesn't want to see you." "It's okay. You don't have to let me in. Just please give him this soup. He's so weak, he needs to eat." Chris was about to refuse, but he knew Daniel hadn't been eating well, so he reluctantly took the thermos inside. Sarah waited foolishly in the hallway, hoping to hear that Daniel had enjoyed her soup. A moment later, Chris burst out of the room, his face pale. "Nurse! Get a nurse in here," he yelled. "My friend is having some kind of reaction." Several nurses rushed into the room. After a quick examination, they determined it was an allergic reaction. Chris poured the remaining soup into the sink. He stormed back out into the hall and grabbed Sarah by the shoulders, his face contorted with rage. "Are you insane? Don't you know he's allergic to ginseng?" he roared. "Are you trying to kill him?" "What? He's allergic to ginseng." Sarah was dumbfounded. She stared at the herbs she had so carefully selected. I just thought it would be good for him. You think you're so thoughtful, don't you? Chris laughed, a harsh, angry sound. You've known him for 20 years, Sarah. Have you ever, once, actually paid attention to him? If you had ever cooked for him, even once, you would know about his allergies. Even I know, but you, his girlfriend of 5 years, had no idea. His words left her pale and speechless. She felt a burning, searing pain in her chest, as if she were being roasted over an open fire. She finally understood why her well-intentioned gestures always seemed to go so horribly wrong. It was because she had never truly paid attention to Daniel. He knew she hated cilantro, that she was allergic to shellfish, and he always made sure to order their food accordingly. But she knew almost nothing about him, and her ignorance had nearly killed him. "I'm so sorry, Daniel," she cried, tears streaming down her face. She finally saw the truth of her failings, and she was filled with a helpless, terrifying shame. All she could do was repeat the words over and over. "The patient's condition is deteriorating. He's having convulsions. Get the oxygen now," a nurse said, her brow furrowed as she ushered them out of the room. For 30 agonizing minutes, they waited. Chris paced the hallway, cursing a blue streak, while Sarah collapsed, kneeling on the floor just outside the door, completely broken. "He's lucky he didn't actually swallow any of it," a nurse told them later. "It could have caused anaphylactic shock." The nurse gave Sarah a stern look. "You shouldn't be giving patients food without knowing their medical history. You could have killed him." Sarah just nodded numbly, then stumbled back into the room and knelt by Daniel's bedside. A red rash had broken out on his face. He was staring blankly at the ceiling. Chris sighed, too exhausted to yell at Sarah anymore. He just waited for Daniel to speak. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. "You don't have to apologize to me," Daniel murmured, his voice hoarse. "This is just my life." "Don't say that," she pleaded. "It was all my fault. I've spent the last 6 months thinking about it every single day. I'm a terrible person. I'm selfish and awful, and I failed you." She slapped her own face, hard, twice, tears streaming from her eyes. "Daniel, you can hit me. You can scream at me. I'll take it. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Daniel was silent for a moment. "I don't need you to," he said finally. "The best way you can make it up to me is by leaving me alone." The dim light of the hospital room flickered. Sarah stayed, kneeling on the floor for 10 minutes before she finally, shakily, got to her feet. He had told her to go, so she went. From that day on, the gossip at the office took a new turn. Sarah stopped going to the EVP's office. She stopped sending gifts. She just put her head down and did her work. But what no one saw was the way she couldn't help but glance at his closed door every time she walked past. Back in the security office, she would watch the surveillance feeds for hours from morning until night. One day, she walked over to Leo's desk. "Sarah, what can I do for you?" Leo said, looking pleasantly surprised. His plan had worked. She was finally coming to him. He felt as if his entire life was about to change. "You've finally come to your senses, haven't you, Sarah? No matter what anyone else does to you, I'll always love you." His heartfelt declaration was met with stony silence. Sarah pulled open his desk drawer and, without searching, pulled out a small, black flash drive. "Leo," she said, her voice so cold it seemed to tremble. "Is there anything you'd like to tell me?" The color drained from Leo's face. "I don't know what you're talking about. I found that drive the other day. I have no idea what's on it. I've spent the last month reviewing every second of security footage," Sarah said. "I know everything." In her quest to find the real saboteur, she had watched every day's footage at least twice. While she hadn't found direct evidence of Leo at the main console, she had found something else. On other cameras, she had seen him acting suspiciously, carrying that same flash drive. She knew it had to be connected. No matter how much Leo denied it, the evidence was clear. The moment the IT department confirmed the drive contained the virus, it was all over. "Sarah, please don't," he begged. "If you turn me in, my life will be ruined." "Did you think about that when you were trying to ruin Daniel?" Sarah asked, her body shaking with rage. She wanted to physically attack him. "It was an accident. I just wanted to download a file. I didn't know the drive had a virus on it," he cried. Leo immediately switched tactics, falling to his knees and begging, banging his head on the floor until it bled. Seeing him so pathetic and broken, Sarah felt a flicker of pity. It reminded her of her own desperate groveling in front of Daniel. They had been friends for a long time. She didn't think he was a truly evil person. Seeing her hesitation, Leo smiled to himself. He still had her wrapped around his finger. She definitely still had feelings for him. "My dearest Sarah, you know I'm not a bad person," he sobbed, tears streaming down his face. "I never blamed Daniel for anything. I know this is all my fault. I was just trying so hard to make things right between you two." Sarah's resolve began to waver. But then, her eyes fell on a piece of paper on his desk. It was a medical report. The name at the top of the page was Daniel Anderson. "What are you doing with his medical records?" she demanded. Leo was too stunned to react as she snatched the paper from his desk. Sarah stared at the page, her blood running cold. It was covered in red flags and highlighted sections. Compromised immune function, a list of 5 severe allergens, and near the top of the list was ginseng. In that instant, everything became terrifyingly clear. "Leo," she whispered, her voice filled with horror, "you're a monster." The sound of her hand connecting with his face echoed in the quiet office. The smug satisfaction he had felt moments before evaporated, replaced by pure, abject terror. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. Please don't turn me in. I'll apologize to Daniel. I'll do anything. I'll be his slave. Get out of my sight." Sarah screamed, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice raw with fury. If she had never gotten involved with Leo, none of this would have happened. The image of Daniel, pale and sick in his hospital bed, flashed in her mind, and her heart clenched with a pain so sharp it took her breath away. "Leo, I will never, ever forgive you for this," she said, her voice shaking. "I never want to see your face again." She threw the medical report at him and stormed out, heading straight for Mr. Young's office. An hour later, a company-wide memo was sent out. The police arrived shortly after to conduct their own investigation. Leo's actions constituted not only corporate espionage, but also criminal endangerment. The company was pressing full charges. His personal belongings were packed into a box and left on the curb. He sat on the ground beside them, completely numb with despair. All he had wanted was to win Sarah back. What had he done that was so wrong? His love, his career, his entire future, 20 years of striving, all gone in an instant. His former colleagues stared at him with expressions of disgust and contempt. Meanwhile, Daniel was being hailed as a hero, given a promotion and a massive bonus, admired by all. The stark contrast was too much for Leo's mind to bear. It twisted something inside him. "Daniel Anderson," he screamed to the empty street. "This is all your fault. I'll get you for this. I swear I'll make you pay." As he was led away by the police, a sense of calm finally returned to the office. For her role in uncovering the sabotage, Sarah's probationary period was ended, and she was offered a permanent position. Mr. Young even offered her a promotion. "So," he said to her at the end of the day, "what will it be? A position in marketing or one in project management?" Mr. Young had called her into his office. "Both marketing and management will be a good fit for you. If you'd like, I can process the transfer immediately." "Well, sir," Sarah began hesitantly, "I was wondering if there might be an opening for an executive assistant?" "An assistant? That's more of an administrative role," Mr. Young said, looking puzzled. "Who did you have in mind?" "EVP Anderson," she said. "I'm afraid that's not possible. He already has an assistant." The words hit Sarah like a ton of bricks. "You didn't know? A new hire started today. She interned with him in London, so they brought her on full-time." Later that day, in the underground parking garage, Daniel was talking to his new assistant. "Let me give you a ride. The train station is a bit of a walk from here." He looked at Chloe, a quizzical expression on his face. "Speaking of which, what are you doing back in the States so suddenly?" "My program finished early," Chloe said, sticking her tongue out playfully. "What? Are you not happy to see me? Am I that terrible to be around?" "Of course not," Daniel said, gently pinching her cheek. "You're just always trying to give me a hard time. Come on, let's go." They had just settled into the car when another figure appeared. It was Sarah. She stared in shock at Chloe in the passenger seat, then turned to Daniel, her voice tight with disbelief. "Daniel, who is she?" Before he could answer, Chloe spoke. Chloe leaned against Daniel, a sweet smile on her face. "Hello," she said. "I'm Chloe, Daniel's assistant, and his girlfriend." She looked at Sarah, her smile never wavering. "Is there something we can help you with?" The sight of this younger, prettier girl at Daniel's side sent a wave of raw, painful jealousy through Sarah. She had thought there was still hope, but now she knew it was well and truly over. In that moment, she finally understood. The pain and helplessness Daniel must have felt, she was now experiencing it 1,000 times over. "Daniel, she's lying, isn't she?" she asked, her voice pleading. "She only just started today." Sarah forced a brittle smile. "Just tell me, yes or no, that's all I need." She was rambling now. "I haven't been bothering you, have I?" I was just trying to work hard for you, quietly. Please, just tell me the truth. Daniel gripped the steering wheel, his expression unreadable. Even though it wasn't true, he couldn't bear the thought of going back to the way things were. He wasn't in love with Sarah anymore, and he didn't feel sorry for her. Yes, he said, we're together. We met in London, Chloe added smoothly. Do you have any other questions? No, Sarah said, shaking her head numbly, a cold, heavy despair settling in her heart. She could only stand there and watch them drive away, clinging to the last shreds of her dignity. Inside the car, the atmosphere was tense. Has it been like this every day since you got back? Chloe asked. More or less, Daniel admitted. Wow, she's persistent. It seems like she really can't let you go. Chloe paused, then asked tentatively, do you still have feelings for her? Daniel shook his head. I don't know why everyone keeps asking me that. If you can fall in love with someone, you can fall out of love with them. There's nothing in this world you can't get over. If you think there is, you just haven't given it enough time. That makes sense, Chloe said with a grin. So, in that case, are you going to buy me dinner to thank me for my excellent performance as your fake girlfriend? I don't think EVPs are supposed to buy their assistants dinner, Daniel said, a small smile playing on his lips. But since you did help me out, I'll make an exception. Just this once. Yes, Chloe cheered, gazing happily out the window at the passing city. She had worked tirelessly for months to finish her degree ahead of schedule. Also, she could get back to the States sooner. And thankfully, Daniel hadn't gotten back together with Sarah. A young woman's crush is not an easy thing to hide, and Daniel had known about Chloe's feelings for a long time. It was why he had kept the assistant position open for her. But his own life was still in flux, and he didn't feel ready to reciprocate. He had always been a serious, responsible person. He would never be careless with someone's heart, the way some people were. Inside the restaurant, Chloe was devouring her food, practically inhaling it. She had been away from home for so long. She had developed an almost fanatical craving for good, authentic Chinese food. Watching her eat with such uninhibited joy, Daniel couldn't help but smile. He always felt so relaxed around her. Hey, can I ask you something? Chloe said, wiping her mouth with a napkin. What kind of person do you see yourself marrying someday? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he asked, what about you? What kind of husband are you looking for? Someone like you, Chloe said, then immediately blushed and broke into a wide, happy smile. It was dusk, and the setting sun cast a warm glow over the restaurant. Looking at the bright, happy girl across the table from him, Daniel felt something stir inside him, a warmth spreading through the cold, dead space in his heart. In the days that followed, Daniel and Chloe grew closer, no longer trying to hide their growing affection for one another. And Sarah watched it all. She had been clinging to a sliver of hope, but with each passing day, she could feel Daniel slipping further and further away. But she never confronted him. She just swallowed her pain and kept it to herself. Until one evening, Daniel was walking home to the new condo he had just bought. He had no idea how Sarah had found his new address, but there she was, waiting for him. Daniel, she said, her voice thick. Can you please come home with me? Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was clearly drunk. I'm home, he said. What do you want? This isn't our home, she slurred. Our home is the apartment over on Clark Street. Have you forgotten? She reached out and grabbed his hand. Remember when we first moved in? We went shopping for furniture together. That's enough, Daniel said, pulling his hand away. What are you trying to accomplish, Sarah? What's the point of bringing all this up now? Daniel, I just miss you so much, she cried, tears streaming down her face. The apartment is so empty and cold without you. I feel like I'm going crazy. She grabbed his arm again. Please, I'm begging you. Just spend one more day with me. Just one day, and I promise I will leave you alone forever. I'll never bother you again. Daniel sighed, his expression grim. Sarah, I have a girlfriend now. This is harassment. Do you understand that? You've already ruined one of my relationships. Please don't try to ruin another one. With that, he turned to walk away. But Sarah, in her drunken state, was not to be deterred. Seeing him walk away, her drunken mind could only process one thought. He was leaving her forever. She lunged forward and wrapped her arms around his legs. Please, Daniel, I'm begging you. Just this one last thing, she sobbed. You promised you would love me forever. It hurts so much. Will you stop it? Daniel finally snapped, his patience gone. Are you the only person in the world who's ever been hurt? He yelled. When are you going to grow up, Sarah? When are you going to act like an adult? It is over between us. It is never, ever going to happen. You can ask me 1,000 times, and the answer will always be the same. I would rather spend the rest of my life alone than ever be with you again. The cruel words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt as if she'd been stabbed with an icicle. A cold gust of wind seemed to sober her up in an instant, and in that moment, the last bit of hope in her heart died. Daniel pulled his leg free and continued walking toward the entrance of his building. But just as he reached the door, a figure lunged out of the shadows of the bushes. Daniel Anderson, I'm going to take you to hell with me. It was Leo, his clothes tattered, his eyes wild, a knife clutched in his hand. Before Daniel could react, Leo tackled him to the ground. I've lost everything because of you, Leo screamed, laughing maniacally. I'm going to prison anyway, so I might as well kill you first. He raised the knife, aiming for Daniel's heart. Sarah, snapping out of her stupor, threw herself at Leo, pulling him off Daniel. Daniel, run, she screamed. Help! Somebody help! You stupid bitch! Leo snarled, turning on her. Even now, you're still trying to protect him. Enraged, Leo threw Sarah to the ground. If you love him so much, you can die with him. Sarah, Daniel yelled, as he saw the flash of the blade and the spray of bright red blood. The building's security guards rushed out, tackling Leo and pinning him to the ground while they called the police. Others carefully lifted Sarah onto a stretcher and into an ambulance. Daniel followed, in a state of shock, all the way to the emergency room. Daniel, she whispered, her face ashen. I'm so glad you're okay. Don't talk, he yelled, his voice thick with a confusing mix of anger and fear. Even if I die, it's okay. It's what I owe you, she said, a faint, bloody smile on her lips. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused. I just wanted to win you back. I just wanted you to love me again. As she spoke, a fresh wave of blood pulsed from her wound. Her injuries were critical. The hospital staff worked frantically to save her. After 3 hours, the surgeon emerged from the operating room, his face grim. Doctor, how is she? Daniel asked. It's not looking good, the doctor said gravely. We're running low on her blood type. You should prepare your cells for the worst. Daniel's heart stopped. He had never imagined it would end like this. No matter how much she had hurt him, she didn't deserve to die. He thought of all their years together, the good times and the bad, and his eyes filled with tears. He wasn't grieving for Sarah, not exactly. He was grieving for their shared past, for the beautiful future they could have had. They could have been happy together. Why did everything have to get so broken? Life is so damn complicated, Chris said with a sigh. I don't even know what to think about her anymore. Nothing is ever just black and white, is it? It's all just shades of gray. No one is all good or all bad. We did what we could. Don't blame yourself for this, man. Daniel nodded, his mind racing. If he had just agreed to her request, if he had just spent that one last day with her, would things have ended differently? Would they have been able to part peacefully? As he was lost in thought, there was a sudden commotion. A group of nurses rushed past, carrying several bags of blood. We got a transfer from the hospital next door, one of them shouted. Let's get this transfusion started now. There's still a chance. Let's move. Hearing this, a spark of hope ignited in the waiting room. 2 more hours passed. Finally, the doctor emerged, looking exhausted but relieved. They had managed to save her. Daniel finally let out the breath he'd been holding and sank into a chair, weak with relief. Later, he went to the police station to give his statement. When he saw Leo, who immediately began begging for his forgiveness, Daniel slapped him hard across the face. After ensuring Leo would face the maximum penalty for attempted murder, Daniel returned to the hospital to watch over Sarah. For several days, he barely slept. When Chloe heard what had happened, she came to the hospital to help. She understood Daniel well enough to know he wasn't doing this out of love, but out of a sense of obligation. He didn't want to be indebted to her. This way, he reasoned, she could finally let go and move on. But Sarah, after her near-death experience, seemed to have changed. She didn't pester him. She barely spoke at all. She would just watch him quietly as he helped the nurses change her for drip. She told him once that she thought she had finally figured out what was important in life. She said she understood things now and that she was ready to let go. For months passed, Sarah made a full recovery and was finally discharged. The first thing she did was submit her letter of resignation to Daniel. Sarah, we've already spoken to HR, Chloe told her. Given the circumstances, you can take medical leave and keep your job. But Sarah just smiled. That's very kind, but this is my decision. Please just have Mr. Anderson sign the papers. In his office, Daniel hesitated for a moment before signing the form. Chloe put a hand on his shoulder. Go on, she said gently. You two need to say a proper goodbye. He had told Chloe months ago that this day might come, that he might need to spend one last day with Sarah to finally close this chapter of his life. After she got into his car, Daniel was the first to speak. "Where to?" he asked. "The amusement park," she replied. He was surprised, but he started the car and began to drive. The old amusement park on the outskirts of Chicago was still a popular destination, crowded with people even on a weekday. "Thank you for taking care of me all those months," Sarah said. "I was already in your debt, and now I feel like I can never repay you." Daniel shook his head. "The moment you saved my life, we became even. Just live your life, Sarah. Don't carry this around with you anymore. There's no point." "You're right," she said. "But I have to admit, I'm surprised you agreed to come with me today." She looked out at the happy crowds. "All those happy moments we used to have. They feel like such a luxury now." "All stories have to end sometime," Daniel said. He reached for a cigarette out of habit, then stopped himself. They spent the whole day at the park, wandering from ride to ride, eating junk food from the concession stands, just like they used to. "All stories have to end," Daniel said. He reached for a cigarette, then thought better of it, and put the pack away. They spent the entire day wandering through the park, eating at food stalls and browsing the souvenir shops, just like they had in the old days. He bought her all her favorite snacks. He sat quietly on a bench and watched as she tried on a silly hat in front of Funhouse mirror. They stayed until the sun began to set. It was then that Sarah spoke. "You always wanted to ride the Ferris wheel, didn't you? Let me treat you this time." "Okay," Daniel agreed. They boarded the old, creaking Ferris wheel. It was the ride they had dreamed of for so long, and they were finally on it. But unlike a Ferris wheel, their relationship couldn't just go around again for another chance. After everything that had happened between them, they sat in silence for a long time as the wheel began its slow ascent. Finally, Sarah was the one to break the silence. "You're exactly the same as you were 20 years ago," she said softly. "When I first moved into your neighborhood, you were in the sandbox, building a rocket ship all by yourself, and you wouldn't even look at me. My mom told me to stay away from you, said your quiet personality might be a sign you weren't very bright." "Is that right?" Daniel chuckled, shifting a little awkwardly in his seat. "But you ended up talking to me anyway." "Why?" he asked. "Because it started to rain," she replied, "and I was the one with the umbrella." They looked at each other, and then they both started to laugh. But as their laughter faded, Sarah suddenly turned her head away. The memories came flooding back, and she couldn't stop the tears from streaming down her face. Daniel sat perfectly still, but he felt a ripple of emotion disturb the calm surface of his heart. How could he ever forget the image of that bright, vibrant girl who used to follow him everywhere? But that was all in the past now. It would never happen again. The story was over. There was no point in dwelling on it. To break the heavy silence, Daniel started talking. They went back and forth, reminiscing about everything from elementary school through college. They even started analyzing their own mistakes, trying to pinpoint where their relationship had gone wrong. It felt as if they had both finally found a sense of peace. At the top of the Ferris wheel, the wind whipped around their small cabin. The wind caught Sarah's long hair, and the setting sun illuminated her face, making her look beautiful. "Daniel," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I'm still in love with you." He nodded. "I know, but I've also come to understand a lot of things. This past year, you've taught me so much," she continued. "I'm not that little girl who used to follow you around anymore. I'm a grown woman now, and I have to take responsibility for my mistakes." She spoke with a quiet sincerity as the Ferris wheel began its descent. She knew this was the last time she would ever speak to him. "The ride is almost over," she said. "It's time for the dream to end. I'm going to move to a new city. I promise I will never bother you again. I hope you'll be happy, Daniel. Always." When the ride came to a stop, they walked slowly to the park entrance and stood at the crosswalk, ready to go their separate ways. There were so many things Daniel wanted to say, but in the end, he kept them to himself. He just watched as Sarah boarded the bus. She turned and waved to him from the window. "Goodbye, Daniel," she called out. "Yeah," he said. "Take care." In the blink of an eye, the bus was gone, disappearing down the street. The evening fog began to clear, and nothing happened. Sarah didn't come running back. She was really gone. All the doubt, the regret, the tension he had been holding on seemed to dissolve in that moment, carried away on the evening breeze. Daniel let out a long, slow breath. It was time for him to start his new life, too. Time passed quickly after that. A year passed, and it was late autumn once again. In all that time, there was no word from Sarah. It was as if she had vanished from the face of the earth. Daniel, meanwhile, had thrived. He achieved great success at work, and his relationship with Chloe grew deeper and stronger every day. Before he knew it, His birthday had rolled around again. All the memories, good and bad, seemed to finally dissolve as he turned 26. He had chosen this day, his birthday, to marry Chloe, a double celebration of new beginnings. Happy birthday, Daniel, and congratulations on your wedding. The reception was a joyous, lively affair. Daniel kissed his new wife, and Chloe kissed him back with all her heart. At that moment, their happiness was complete. Leave it to Daniel to think of his friends, Chris joked during his toast. Holding his birthday and his wedding on the same day, so we only have to buy one present. The crowd roared with laughter. Daniel laughed. Since you brought it up, you could just give us 2 gifts. Otherwise, you're cut off in the open bar. As Chris pretended to make a run for it, a delivery person entered the reception hall with a package. Is that your second gift? Daniel teased. I have no idea, Chris said, looking genuinely confused. Who's it from? Everyone at the table was curious. When they opened the box, they found a birthday cake inside. The card was unsigned, but when Daniel read the simple message written in frosting on top, he understood everything. He let out a soft chuckle. It read, "Happy 25th birthday, Daniel.